Welcome to Stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw, and that would be your Chickasha native, your Chickasha Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we got one of the best guys and one of the best workers in the world today. He's held titles all over the freaking place. He right now has the Control Your Shot Gauntlet thing that he's going to cash in, which means mathematically he is almost a certainty to be a TNA champion coming up. He is Mr. Frankie Kazarian. Frankie, welcome to the show.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me, man. Very much looking forward to talking to you guys.
Oh, Frankie, great to have you on, man. A Southern Cowboy, a boy like yourself there. You and JBL were talking gyms a little bit earlier, and the best gyms to go to. And John,
yeah, we were. That's
favorite.
what it was, and that's about all.
John had his favorite right off the bat.
That's right. That's right.
Don't leave it to your imagination.
I joined it. I liked it so much.
A gym we both frequented back in the day. Let's just leave it.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, you know, when you're young, you don't know any better.
Oh, my God. I just told the story the other day about going to the donkey show down in Mexico, and Gerald told me the story about going down there and seeing a guy in a donkey suit. So
with Terry Funk, no less too.
Yeah, don't talk to me about being young and making bad decisions, Mr. Brisco. Literally, he goes down there and sees a guy in a donkey suit.
Terry Funk's decision maker that night.
So go ahead and question, Mr. Brisco.
Oh, no, it was just fun. I'd rather talk about Terry Funk going down to Mexico with the donkey. That was a great story, but we can't tell it on family TV here.
Yeah, it was a guy in a donkey suit, right?
A guy in a donkey suit. Yeah, it was fun. And Terry really had fun with it. Terry started the night off while we're on Terry Funk. You know, we of course you go to Tijuana, and of course you're inebriated when you get there, and
sure.
you just partake in their tequila and just get a little bit more wasted. And the more we got, Terry, I'm hungry, so we start walking around. We see this steakhouse, $5 steaks, that's old Jim Ross, tougher than a $3 steak or a $2 steak, whatever the hell it is. What a cheap steak. $5, that's a cheap ass steak even in Mexico. So we go in there, we're sitting there, we're drinking shots of tequila. These businessmen are sitting at a table next to us, kind of eavesdropping. They get up and go to the bathroom. When they get up and go to the bathroom, the waitress comes and puts her dinner down on the table. Terry I've seen Terry Funk drunk. I've been arrested with Terry Funk in foreign countries, so I've seen Terry at his worst. So Terry reaches over and grabs the guy's steak right out of his plate just as they're walking back. I mean, here's Terry, his 275 at the time. He's chomping down on that steak. A businessman comes over, sir, you just got my steak. Really? I thought she set it down on my plate. I made a mistake here. I ordered the exact same thing, Terry tried to make a friend with him. Finally, they end up buying each other shots of tequila all night. We get drunk with the two bitches, man. They forget to buy Terry the steak. I had to buy my own fucking steak that night. But that's Terry Funk. But anyway, Frank.
Wait a minute. What happened?
I'm not going to go into that donkey story, Don. It's a family hour here.
Terry was awesome. I didn't know him the way you gentlemen did, but I got to meet him and know him a little bit through the Cauliflower Alley Club and one TNA house show run back in 2009, maybe 8 or 9. And we went through Amarillo, and Mick Foley was on the shows with us, and he invited Terry to the show, and Terry came by. And after invited a bunch of us to go to his favorite watering hole and restaurant in Amarillo, and me and Samoa Joe and Jay Lethal and I think Eric Young, a couple guys went and just sat there. He paid for everything, wouldn't let us pay for food, for drinks. So we just sat there for hours while him and Mick were just talking, telling stories. Man, it was just what a cool night. I'm so grateful to have those type of nights with guys like that, man. It was so much fun.
Yeah, what a memory for a guy, legend like Terry Funk. Terry Funk, he's a true chameleon. Terry could fit in at any environment there is in the world. I mean,
absolutely.
As goofy as he is, you could take him in with a group of TV executives and sit down there, and he could converse with them, have them all laughing, and get everything he wanted just because of his sense of humor and his demeanor around people. What a great guy! But Frankie, you're kind of a unique guy too. You're a SoCal guy. You're born and raised in Southern Cal. what kind of were you a high school athlete? I mean, your passion for wrestling started at a very early age, I understand. So kind of walk us through what kind of inspired that love for wrestling.
Sure. Growing up, a child of the '80s, I was always a fan of sports, baseball and football, particularly, and huge fan of action movies. Stallone, Schwarzenegger, all those guys. My love for wrestling, I've told this story before, was through Rocky 3. I was a huge fan of Rocky 3. Um, and one day I went to the video store with my mom and my cousin, and we saw what we thought was Clubber Lang and Thunder Lips on in a ring. It happened to be the VHS tape of WrestleMania 1. I didn't know what wrestling was, but I rented it thinking it was some type of Thunder Lips backstory or origin story. Brought it home, popped it in, and there's, Tito Santana versus the Executioner, match 1 of WrestleMania. And I was hooked, man. It just grabbed me, and I just never, it was an obsession from that day. And that's what kind of got me on my path to wrestling. And this was probably 85, 86. And then growing up basically out here only getting WWF, that primarily is what I watched. I only got into like NWA and other stuff through the Apter magazines. And, growing up, I was always a good athlete, but I was always very small, very undersized, very skinny. I was a late bloomer. My freshman year, I played football 4 years in high school, but my freshman year, I was 5 foot and barely 100 pounds. My son right now is 12 years old. He's bigger than I was as a freshman. So I was a late bloomer. And always had always had that dream and that goal of wanting to be a pro wrestler. But at the time, it was like, how do you become a wrestler? How do you learn to become a Jedi? It was so, there wasn't like you couldn't punch. There was no internet. You couldn't punch in how to be a pro wrestler. Like I had to send away for books. And there was like, I think Percy Pringle had written a little pamphlet, and maybe someone else had written pamphlets on.
Wait a minute. Percy had a pamphlet out on how to be a wrestler?
Yeah, like he had Percy Pringle and someone else. They had like how to break into professional wrestling, and what it had in there was a bunch of like
was it the Fields brother, James Fields down in Mobile? That's who he was hooked
possibly, yeah. But in there, it was a bunch of just basically like wrestling etiquette, which is kind of invaluable and should still be taught more today. But it had a list of addresses and phone numbers of all the wrestling schools in the country, and at the time there was probably like 15. So I, started researching those and broke it down to like 3 ones that I thought I wanted to go to because they had notoriety, and that's what got me rolling.
Well, the one that you chose is kind of unique, and I'm kind of curious. That SoCal guy moving all the way to Boston, the great Killer Kowalski, who I had the great honor of being married to at professional wrestling for like 3 months on a tour in Australia. I worked with him every night for like.
Oh yeah.
He requested me, and I learned so much from him. But is that how you got hooked up with Walter Kowalski?
Yeah, pretty much. So I broke it down to there was 3 schools that really like stuck out to me because I always wanted to get trained by someone that had been there and done that, or somebody that I had heard of. So it was down to Kowalski School, the Dungeon in Canada, which naively enough at the time I thought, well, Stu surely is running this. I didn't know it was like a carny operation at that point, and the Power Plant in WCW. And a buddy of mine and myself had met Bret Hart at a baseball card show, and we had asked him, we're like, we're looking to get into the business, where do we go train? Thinking for sure he's going to recommend the Hart camp. And he says, Killer Kowalski's training a lot of good guys right now. And at that time, Bret's word was gospel to me. I was a huge Bret Hart guy. So I was like, well, Kowalski's it is. The only problem is it's, literally on the other side of the
3,000 miles away.
Yeah. But it didn't matter, like I was like, dude, if I'm going to do this, I want to get trained the right way.
How old were you, Frank?
I was 19 when I made this decision, 20 when I began training. So yeah, I saved up a year. I was working at Champ Sports in the mall, saved up full tuition and all that, and in early 1998, packed everything I owned in my garbage little Chevy Citation and drove across the United States.
So the big thing, Frankie, is did you and all your friends know all the words to Thunder Lips promo?
Oh, well, at that time, sure. I might still know it. Yeah.
The ultimate
That's-
male versus the
Yep,
ultimate meatball.
yep. In the
Oh my
flesh,
God!
both of
I
them.
we used me and my college roommates used to say that freaking promo all the time. That was one of the
Oh,
greatest promos ever.
so good. He was great for that role, man. No matter what your your feelings are on him, that was such an iconic role, man.
Yeah, he was absolutely perfect for it. And talk about at the right time, to do that
Oh,
right when WrestleMania's
sure,
kicking off, and it just
sure.
timing couldn't have been better.
Yeah.
So when you got out of high school, did you have any pushback from your parents or anybody that you weren't going to college, that you wanted to be a wrestler? Did they support you? Did they try to talk you out of it? What do they do?
So my can't say enough good things about my parents. My dad's passed, but I mean, I think they knew how much I loved it. And uh, in high school, I have this dream of being a pro wrestler, but again, I don't know how to go about it. My friends are going off to college. I had actually, I was like one signature, two signatures away from going into the Navy. I'd been talking to a Navy recruiter because I had an uncle that was in the Navy, and that seemed like it was a good fit. But the more and more I listened to the guy talk and everything, it was like, wow, I'm really gonna have to fall in line and just, really be. And I'm not, I'm too much of a rebellious spirit to just to be in the military. God bless anybody that can. It wasn't for me. And community college, I didn't really have. It was all just I was kind of going through the motions, and so I just didn't do anything after high school and started working. And when I finally told my parents that, they were like, "Well, um, if you're going to do it right. We're going to support you 100%. You're going to get out of it what you put into it." And they've been on board the entire time. They were couldn't have been more supportive, which is I'm very fortunate because I know a lot of people, a lot of my peers, and a lot of my colleagues didn't have that. So I always had that support team. As much as it pained my mom watching her baby boy drive across country to learn how to get beat up for a living, she was and is still supportive.
Yeah.
Did
When you
Killer
got
have
to
did Killer
what
have a
what
place for you guys to stay?
No, that's another thing. I remember, we had a buddy of mine had also gone over there to train, and we had called him, and talking to Walter on the phone was not, it was just like, "Hey, I'm coming to your school from California." Okay. Uh, okay. I understand this is the price. Yes. Is there a place we have him stay? Nope. Okay. So, literally, like when I got
That's
there,
Kowalski. That's Kowalski's answers
yeah,
too. I know.
when I got there, me and a buddy and another guy who was a referee were living in a tiny loft in Malden, Massachusetts, in this apartment. Three guys in this tiny loft. It was disgusting and smelly. I lived there for a while, until I eventually got my own place. But no, you were basically on your own. I became buddies with a couple students, and they kind of helped me out and showed me around, the Massachusetts area. But no, you're on your own, 100%.
What was Triple H already gone from there? Paul Levesque was he
Yeah.
already
So this
gone?
was this was '98. The most notable student that was still there at the time was Matt Bloom, and he had already been signed. And this was back when they were signing guys just so they, wouldn't get picked up by WCW. So Matt was already signed, but he was just still training and doing like local independents. So he was like the guy there. Yeah, Triple H and China and John Cronus and Perry Saturn, those guys were all off doing their thing already. So yeah, Matt Bloom was like the guy there, um, and still just doing his thing until he got called up not that long after.
So
Did,
what kind of training did Walter give you? I mean, as far as smartening you up to the business, I mean, was he pretty open about that, or did you have to earn his trust to
Yeah,
do
it was
that?
he was pretty closed off. Like when I walked into wrestling school, like you know, the minute I walked in, just seeing the ring and seeing the guys actually doing the stuff right in front of me was like, woof, a little bit intimidating. And everybody looked at me like they hated me, like immediately. It wasn't
Yeah.
as welcoming as it is today, And with Walter, you had to earn your way into the ring. And what I mean by that is like you had to learn like all the holds on the floor, chain wrestling, just all the reversals and counters, and you didn't know them all like the back of your hand until you got the privilege to get in the ring, which is what it is. It's a privilege. And yeah, very old school, very fundamental driven, a lot of focus on, the technique, and it was tough. It was very, very tough. It was physically demanding, but I loved it and I wouldn't change a thing for the world.
Was there the conditioning? Was there a lot of conditioning that went with it, or was it all just conditioning as far as what you were doing?
There was a lot of conditioning. There was, Walter still. I was fortunate enough that Walter still, was a lot more hands on than he would be later. And he had a guy named Mike Hollow running the actual classes for him, and he would, try to blow us up and try to, get guys to quit, and he did. And
How would he blow you up?
we would do these drills. So Walter shared the studio with a guy named Richard Byrne, who was a Tang Soo Do instructor and also part-time wrestler. And we would do these drills where like we would go to the back of the gym, sprint into the ring, run into the ring, do like hit the rope 10 times, do a drop down, hit the rope 10 times, do a drop, and then go over the top rope to the floor, get back in line, and just like you had to do it in a certain time and just ridiculous stuff like that. And just an ungodly number of bumps and backdrops. And I was stupid enough, like I took a good backdrop early on. And so I was always game to, so anytime they needed to teach backdrops, Kowalski would be like, go get in there. I'm like, sure. Just run in there and, post and take a backdrop. And, I probably took 60 backdrops in a day, which
Wow.
looking back now, I would turn to dust if I did that. But man, I could not get enough of it back then. I lived for it.
People don't realize
Yeah.
how many bumps guys took training back then. I see it now, and God bless them. I love it. I think it's great. But man, of course, we didn't know what all it did to your head either. So that's why we're going to be
No.
on Easter eggs. We probably just hid, but it was insane the amount of bumps we took training.
And you love it. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I looked forward to, I could not wait to get into that ring and just to take a bump or to hit the ropes or to, like I was going back to Matt Bloom, like he was, if you wanted to try a new move, he'd be like, Frankie, get over here. And I'd be like, yes, sir. And he would, pick, throw. Okay. Like, how'd that look? Good. I don't know. Try it again. I could not. And I was 20 years old. I was indestructible,
Right.
Yeah, so like it
exactly.
didn't matter to me.
The other kids that made the trip out to the East Coast with you, did they stick with it too?
No. One is still a very good friend to this day. One of my best friends. I grew up with him. He's a teacher, and no, just wasn't for him. He didn't have the. You have to have a very, very thick skin, as you guys know in this business,
Okay.
and he just didn't have that. He couldn't deal with the mental gymnastics and the stuff like that. He just didn't have that gene, and still a fan to this day. But yeah, just not for him. Certainly not for everybody.
Dutch Mantel, his best expression was, there's only two things you can't do: heel or babyface. And that was the old guys. You talk about the mental gymnastics; they just love just beating the shit out of you verbally, And then and of course it became fun to banter back and forth, but that banter was stiff.
Dutch was hitting me with that line in the mid 2000s in TNA still. So, yeah.
Dutch is
yeah.
Oh, he's the best.
He's awesome.
Pat Patterson's line, I had just went to Boston. You know who asked about you? Nobody.
Yep, that's
it's these old jokes that these guys tell. They're not that funny, but the way they tell them, it's like Groucho Marx telling a joke. He's like, that's really funny. No, actually really wasn't, but the way they tell it is really freaking good.
Oh, Dutch would always pull me over. Hey, you know what I liked about that match? And I go, what? And he goes, the fact that it ended. And I walked away. And I was like, thinking I'm going to get this compliment, and like, thanks a lot.
Or you'll get your comeback, kid, when you come back to the dressing room.
Right. Right.
Oh, Dutch,
there were dozens of them. Pat had delivery, and you knew how Pat would lead in, which one was coming next, too. I mean, it was the same routine every day, but they were funny each time you saw Pat. They hit you with that.
Sure.
Pat, Dutch, when I would do the job, would sit there and he would go, and just it was like the most dramatic thing you'd ever seen, like a kid just lost his puppy, and I'm going, Dutch, we quit doing that, really, seriously, you fucking quit, you better quit that. It was so funny though, it was great.
Yeah.
So how long was it before that you started really grasping the business as a work and all that stuff? I mean, was it right away you were catching on, or how long?
So cool story. The first I'm there for the Saturday, Sunday, I think, and then that Monday, Tuesday, and then I actually got in the ring and started taking bumps and learning how to do it. And at this time, I'm staying, before I moved in with my buddies in that loft, I'm staying at a Red Roof Inn. And one day in the morning, the phone rings and it's like, nobody knows me here. And I answered, and it's Kowalski. He said, "Yes, Walter, get dressed. We're going to go to breakfast." Okay. At this time, I'm still kind of unsure of myself, and I'm still like, I moved across country. Is this, wow, this is a lot. And he picks me up, makes me drive because Walter
What
did
was
not.
you worried? Was you worried when you got that call to come meet me for breakfast? Was that
Uh,
unusual?
uh, More not worried, but intimidated because Walter's, he's Killer Kowalski. He's a legend, and
Yeah,
he
yeah,
was a giant man,
yeah.
and kind of scary looking. He looked like, he almost looked like a movie monster, like,
Yeah, he did.
um,
He did. Yeah.
but yeah, he picked me up, made me drive. He had a real shitty car at the time. And we're driving to breakfast, and and he just goes, you really got something, just stick with this, stick with me, and you're gonna do good. And I was like, man, that put me at such ease. Like, wow, like, okay, maybe I didn't make a mistake. Maybe this is for me. And in terms of picking up the actual moves, that came natural to me, and the holds, because I was such a good, big wrestling fan, and I'd watched and
Right.
consumed so much of it, and I was an okay athlete. So the how came to me quickly. The when, why, and where, that's the stuff that, took me a while to develop. That I didn't really grasp until, got 5+ years in.
And when did you start working as far as matches working when you were training?
So I worked my first match with maybe a month of training, and it wasn't planned. This was May 15th, 1998. I went to a show with a buddy of mine that was going to be on the card, and I went to help set up the ring and to help with security and everything. So we get there and we set up the ring. I'm helping out. I'm actually taking Polaroid photographs for the Honky Tonk Man. In his with his line of fans, taking Polaroid photographs. I'm his photograph boy, and I get a tap on the shoulder, and it's like, "Hey, you need to work tonight." And I'm like, okay, like, Mr. Honky Tonk Man, I'm sorry, I can't. And I go in the back, and one of the guys had car issues going to the show, wasn't going to make it. So the guy I had rode with was my buddy Freight Train Dan. This is the guy I would have my first match with. He's like, "You'll work me. Don't worry about it. We'll go like 10 minutes. It'll be easy. Do you have wrestling gear?" I don't. I have wrestling shoes and knee pads. So Richard Byrne, who's the gentleman that owned the studio with Walter, the Tang Soo Do martial artist and pro wrestler,
He's the brother of
throws
Matt
me.
Byrne.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He throws me this pair of purple tie-dye tights and these boots.
Purple, that was Kowalski's color too.
Yeah, it was. He loved purple. But he throws me these tights and these boots, and he's like, "Those boots have been all over the world, kid. Like, don't shit the bed tonight." Like, so I'm getting dressed. My buddies, we go out there and we have like, the most basic match we can, but it's the business is starting to get pretty hot, and this is in Gardner, Massachusetts. There's probably 1,200 people there. The good thing is I didn't even have enough time to get nervous. Like, we went out there, we did the match, and it was as bare bones basic as it could be. I didn't blow up. I didn't miss a spot. Everything was fine. Came in the back, and like, man, I was on cloud nine. I was like,
Wow,
and then I got
yeah.
a little envelope with like, it might have been $50 in it, and I was like, yeah, it was just like this. If this, it was the pinnacle. Like,
Yeah.
I got to do that,
I
and
made it. I made it, right? I made it.
I got paid money. Yeah, it was like, if I could bottle up that feeling and sell it, I'd be a very
Did,
rich.
did you call mom and dad immediately after?
I think I called them the next day, and I was like, I had my first match, and it was like, oh, they couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it because but there was trust there because I was quickly becoming one of the better students in Kowalski's class, and then got to wrestle a bunch more in Massachusetts before I eventually came back to Cali.
Well, how much were you selling Honky Tonk's Polaroids for? Do you
Oh
remember?
God, I mean, let's see, this was 98, so I'm guessing it was at least $10 a shot, right? Like,
That's
at
what
least.
I would have guessed $10.
At least, yeah, because he was the main event. It was Honky Tonk versus Tony Atlas. So yeah, and then I ended up wrestling for Tony Atlas because he saw me on that show, and it was just kind of word of mouth back then. So it was cool.
So as you're going back to California, did you have plans? I mean, in your mind, I mean, well, I'm going to do this, but because Southern Cal, even back in those days, there wasn't a lot of independent groups around where you could go.
Correct. No, and I didn't really want to leave, but I was, A, running out of money, even though I was working. but I was working. I was living in a bedroom in a this house that this lady owned, and I was 20 years old. I was getting a little homesick. I was running out of money. I loved what I was doing, but I was like, I don't know if I could sustain this. And found out about a school called the School of Hard Knocks, run by Bill Anderson and Jesse Hernandez out in Southern California.
Right.
And I talked to Walter and said, like, I have to go back. And I told him about that school. He knew Bill and Jesse, and he goes, they're good guys. They'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. So I kind of got Walter's blessing. Um, so I did eventually end up coming back home, going down there and training. And I realized quickly, like, no disrespect to the guys out here, but I was light years ahead of anyone out here just because of the way Walter broke me in terms of knowing the fundamentals and just learning how to work. So, I immediately kind of like rose to the head of the class out here and started getting like a good amount of bookings out of it.
And who all was running out in Southern Cal at the time? Was there any territories or just all spot shows?
So yeah, it was all spot shows pretty much. I mean, this was still like the EWF was the school I was training under, Bill and Jesse, and they ran maybe monthly, if we were lucky, bi-monthly. In the next year, UPW and APW
Was that Bassman?
would emerge. Yeah, he came in about a year later, and then that got really big. And then the Northern Cali scene with APW got really big. But in between then, it was just a lot of like local shows, maybe a couple shows in Mexico, little lucha shows, learning a bit of that style. But yeah, it was just the indie scene was pretty bare bones in Southern California in the late 90s, early 2000s, actually until UPW, Rick Bassman, and it became a developmental group and started to get a lot of eyeballs on it.
Now, Southern Cal, you mentioned Mexico. Did you ever have any desire to be like a lucha style wrestler?
I wanted to learn aspects of that because a lot of that was very appealing to me. I loved the stuff that Rey Mysterio was doing and that Hoovy and Psychosis, but I realized I was never going to be a guy that would necessarily do that. But I could implement that style into what I was doing. And I wanted to be well-rounded. I wanted to be, I wanted to break in the way guys used to break in, where they, spent some time in the States, some time in Mexico, sometimes in Japan, sometimes in Europe. I wanted to do all that. That's like how I wanted to come up the right way and just be so well-rounded by the time I got picked up, by a major promotion.
Where were you working in Mexico? Was it with Tijuana?
Yeah, I did like TJ, just little crappy shows right across the border with
like spot show type things, not
sure. Yep. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Companies, yeah.
Yes.
Because Tijuana has always been a pretty good hotbed of wrestling.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's always wildly popular over there. So it was just not the safest.
Still not.
You kind of park your car in the San Diego side, walk across, and then don't dare leave your vehicle over there and come back and try to get out of there with your money and your life intact.
So compare that to, because I'm very curious about, because wrestling now to me is, I think, the hottest I've ever seen it overall. I'm talking about the independents and everything other than, say, WWE. Not just WWE being hot; it's very hot itself, but everything. Is the independent scene in California now? How does that compare to when you started, or do you know because you don't have to do it?
I mean, I try to kind of monitor, but I'll say there's a lot of quantity, but not a lot of quality. There are still a lot of shows going on, but nothing noteworthy. Nobody making any real noise. It's there's promotions like Game Changer Wrestling comes out here, and when they come out to SoCal, they draw a big house. They do good. Same with like this promotion Prestige. But there's no real big company in Cali running like regular shows. Local stuff, yeah, but there's not a whole lot.
What was that kid's name that had Hollywood Wrestling? That Paul Bear and all those guys.
Dave Marquez, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Yeah. Okay, now they would be the maybe one that runs more steady than anyone else, and they do have like local television, so like that would be one. But that's probably it.
Now, when you were around Bassman, was that pre John Cena and all that crew?
No. John had just started when I started with UPW. I'd already made a name for myself kind of out here, and John was John was brand new. I wrestled John, I think, in his maybe third or fourth match. And this was in San Diego for UPW, and I just met him, and I remember him saying like, "Hey, you know, I'm very green. I know you do a lot of high flying, a lot of stuff. I go, actually, I don't, man. It's just the guys I've been in matches with.
Which is strange because he's a Boston guy. He would have figured you
I
came
know,
from
yeah,
Boston.
it's crazy. We like did the opposite things, Like I
Yeah.
went there, he came here.
Yeah.
But anyways, we had a match that was fine, and then like I really, became really good buds with him because I started training at UPW, and uh, there was me, John, and Samoa Joe were at every single class, and like John Cena, I've said this since day one until this to this day. His best attributes are his work ethic and his attitude, because that dude was busting his ass every day in class, trying to get better, and had a great attitude about it. Every step of the way. So we became buds, and we trained together, and we hung, and we did shows together, and that's when UPW was obviously developmental territory. So that's when I started to get, you know, some eyeballs on what I was doing or what we were doing collectively.
And you guys rap together, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, we used to have like they would freestyle like we either outside the school or we'd go to Samoa Joe's house for these incredible Samoan barbecues. They just give you food until you pass away. It was incredible. And we would like freestyle rap, and I would, I'm a rock and metal guy, so I'd pretend to know what I was doing and try, but like those guys would go back and forth, and yeah, man, it was the innocence of those days is not lost on me, man. It was really, really fun looking back all these years and seeing where we all are now. It's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, and Cena, what a smart guy. That's one of the things, famously that saved his job. He did a freestyle rap for
Yep.
Vince, and Vince, asked Bruce famously, how long did it take him to memorize that? Bruce said, no, that was on the fly. That's when he realized that this guy's different. Talking about Cena,
Yep.
he is.
Yep. Yep. That's so cool that's what got him like over that hump and like became the basic thugonomics character and all that. And it's like, I used to battle rap with it, way back when. So it was really cool.
And how often were you guys working out there? You guys you're training at UPW. How often were you working?
So with UPW, we started to really pick up the pace. He would do monthly shows at the Galaxy Theater where we'd have people scout. Mr. Brisco, you came and watched us once or twice there, I remember. Then we'd have shows every Saturday. So between UPW and Independence, I'm starting to work 3-4 times a week, which is good. I'm getting my reps in. So, and we had WWF at the time representation coming down and critiquing us. So, getting us out of the bad habits that we had maybe acquired. So like there was that a full like year where I got to learn a lot of what not to do, and get rid of these bad habits from the independents, and get my reps in and really start just working in front of different crowds, and just more people and working different people, guys of all sizes, and that's when I really started to mature more as a pro wrestler.
The history there in the Coliseum was really cool. With I'll go back to Gorgeous George, but even in the '70s, you had Chavo Senior and Piper selling the place out in some incredible angles. Was there any vestiges left of the territory there when you guys were running? I mean, like a lot of territories, some guys would still be around. You'd still see some old whatever.
Yeah,
You'd still see old, doctors, door guys,
sure.
ring crew, stuff like that. Was any vestiges of the old territory around?
Uh, no, the only it would be, I mean, Gene LaBelle was still running like a judo school out here. Bill and Jesse, who were the School of Hard Knocks where I was training, they were, guys that were like, used a lot. Like Bill Anderson was a ring announcer for those guys, for Mike and Gene, and for early WWF house shows out here. And Jesse was a wrestler for those. So like just little fragments of that left.
Jesse had been around quite a while, probably when you got there.
Yeah, Jesse had been around a long time, and he was broken by the Great Goliath. And Jesse's a very, very good trainer, like one of the
Very
best,
good, yes.
very
I
good
agree.
trainer. And he'll even say he's a better trainer than he was a wrestler. But he's just I owe the world to that guy. He's one of my favorite people. So yeah, to answer your question, like those guys, little bits and pieces, but it had already kind of been so many years removed that it wasn't even like a thing anymore.
And did Gene LaBelle ever come around?
I met Gene also through the Cauliflower Alley Club. and he was a very nice man. He was always trying to, talk me into coming down and, he's like, come roll with us. And, in his judo class. And I was thinking he just wanted me in there so he could stretch me. And I was like, I don't know, Gene, but I got to know him pretty well too, which was cool. A lot of these more seasoned guys I met through the Cauliflower Alley Club. Because I would go to that every year, and I've been a member for 25 years. So,
How did you get hooked up at first with the CAC? Because that's
Kowalski, Kowalski. So when I came back here, I stayed in touch with Walter, and I'd call him and bother him and talk to him as much as I could. Going back, I had a very good. I was lucky because I would drive Walter to and from wrestling class every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I would pick him up early on Sundays, and he loved going to church. There was this Catholic church in Massachusetts that he loved to go to. I would go there with him. We'd go to breakfast, then we'd go to wrestling school. And we'd get to the school an hour before the class began. So I got a lot of one-on-one time with Walter, which I cherish more than anything. So like I developed a relationship, like a Mick Rocky type relationship. So I would call Walter and talk to him all the time. And one of the times he tells me, I'm coming to Las Vegas. There's a convention, Cauliflower Alley. And I was like, oh, cool. I'll come out and meet you. And came out, met him. That was that first year in '98. And God, he introduced me to his trainer, Mr. Luthez. So like,
Wow.
yeah, man, I met Luthez and Bob Orton Sr. and all of Walter's buddies and got to hang out with them and go have lunch with them. And again, me just being the fan I am, I'm just like in awe. Like I'm literally sitting with royalty. It's so cool. And went to the Cauliflower Alley Club reunion that year, and just thought it was there was just my language, man. A bunch of old timers talking about wrestling. I loved it. Maybe with a couple of adult beverages mixed in. It was a great time. And so I just became a member and have been a member ever since.
One of the cool things about stuff like that is they had the Hall of Fame at WWE one time, and I was inducting somebody, and I can't remember who it was, and I was sitting there at catering, and I'm sitting with the Four Horsemen, J.J. Dillon, and Mike Tyson, and I'm sitting there at one point going, "How the hell did I get to this table? This is great."
Right.
Like, I
Right.
got it. I got it at the time. Like how cool this was to be there with those guys.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Like things like that aren't lost on me anymore, man. It's just like just the fact that I got to meet Luthez is super cool, and just the things I've done, the people I've been around. And I owe it all to pro wrestling.
And the best promo cut on me was they were all, all the old wrestlers trying to get their tuxedos on with their, crippled old fingers and everything and stuff like that. So I said, what they need to film is all you crippled old guys in here trying to get your tuxedos on. And Arn Anderson cut the best promo on me ever. It was just Arn. He's like, you think? It's great, great.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yep. Yeah.
It was awesome. And Arn and I were friends before that anyway, so
Sure. Yeah.
it was fun. Arn can cut the best promo. He on the boys.
Oh, yeah.
Especially those off the cuff promos where it just
when he gets
all of a
mad,
sudden he starts into one.
oh my God, when
yeah.
he gets mad and starts cutting a promo on people, it's the greatest thing ever. You live for stuff like that.
He's the best, man. Arn Anderson is the best.
Yes, 100%. I have had so much fun with Arn. So when was your first break to get out of the UPW to go out? When was your first break?
So even before UPW and during, I'm starting to get a lot more. I ended up teaming with Nova, Mike Bucci, who was a former ECW guy, and through him, I started getting booked a lot, like on the East Coast, and getting to see like the tri-state area, like independent scene, which was hot at the time. And then got to go to Japan early on.
Who'd you go for?
I went for 0-1, which was Hashimoto's group. They
Yeah.
had just started up, and so I started going over for 0-1 for a bunch of tours. And that, again, that's, learning that style, learning Japanese, the Japanese style of pro wrestling, which is a lot more strong style than what was going on here in the States at the time. So that really started, getting the word of mouth out about me, and I started getting a lot more bookings. I went on a tour of Europe through Andrew McManus, who was running World Wrestling All Stars at the time, and that's where I met Scott D'Amore, Jeff Jarrett, Jeremy Borash, and this is when TNA had just begun, and they saw me on this tour, and I came home from that tour, and maybe 2 weeks later got a call to asking if I wanted to come do basically a tryout for TNA, and that was late spring of early summer of 2003.
I mean, so what was that tryout like? I mean, what did you have to do there?
So the tryout was I flew in, got to the Nashville Fairgrounds, that old building.
Yeah, been there a few times.
Yeah, yep. I actually wrestled the last ever show in that building. Me and Chris Daniels against the Rock and Roll Express.
That is cool. It's also cool who you got to wrestle.
Yeah, another one of those mind blowing. If you would have told 12-year-old me that, it would have just blown my mind.
Yeah.
Unreal. But yeah. So I get there and they put me in a 6-man tag, and it's me and CM Punk and Matt Stryker against three other guys. I can't remember at this time.
They give you a tryout match in a 6-man tag.
So, yes,
that's
so,
horrible.
Yes. It was the Wild West back then, so it was weird. They just put me out there, and and we do the match. We win. I think I got the pin even. And they call me next week. All right, you're coming back. Call me next week. You're coming back. All of a sudden, I'm in a feud for the X Division title, and I was like, I guess I work here. I don't, I guess I got to,
Still no contract or anything.
No, nothing yet. Eventually, I signed like a per show contract, and guaranteeing me X amount of dollars per show, and then but that was all a slow process. It was like weeks when I was like, and they start feature. Yeah, maybe my third or fourth match, I'm wrestling AJ for the NWA title at the time, like in the main event. So I was like, I guess I work here. I mean, I don't know if they, they're featuring me like I work here. I don't, I'm still very confused and terrified to even ask. Like, hey, do I work here? It's like, no, kid, get out. That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
What are you doing there?
Right. And then eventually, they started locking guys into actual contracts, when they actually started to become more of an entity. And then the next year when they went down to Orlando, and so, but I started then and just kind of was just thrown into the mix right away.
So, Jerry, you've done a million tryouts for a million guys. You've signed a million talent. Have you ever stuck a guy in a 6-man tag for a tryout?
Oh, the only one I wish I had was you. No, I've never. I can't even imagine that unless you're looking at the other two guys there. But you just get it's just so convoluted and watered down. I can't imagine that. But everybody has their preference there. So, but
yeah, it was strange because it wasn't even like a tryout. I'm thinking I'm going to be on before the tape starts rolling or anything. No, this was just on the show, on the weekly paper.
Oh, you were actually on the show.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't a pre-show.
No.
That's even stranger. Well, no, I don't know anything about this guy, but I'm going to put him on my TV
That's right.
show.
I don't know if this guy's any good. We may want to hire him.
Yeah.
Let's put him on our TV show.
Yeah.
Where we can't edit it out.
And put him over on top of it, right?
Yeah.
That's right. We're going to put him on.
It was just a cold match. And I think, at that time, Scott D'Amore was helping out, and he was confident enough, and he knew that I was perfectly capable.
Well, these guys that seen you, Scott, and those guys that seen you in Japan, so they knew.
Yeah, they knew that I wasn't. They knew that I don't think they would have put me out there if they thought there was a chance that I was gonna.
Well, to me, it kind of tells me if they saw you, they liked you, they were going to hire you anyway, so they just put you there and
that might have been the case, but at the time, again, I didn't know, I didn't ask, I was just just there, just doing what I was told.
Give me a number and I'll go.
100%, yes, sir.
Was that Jerry and Jeff Jarrett? Was that when they were running TNA at the point, right?
Yeah, this was Jerry and Jeff. They were running the show. Dutch was there at the time, or he had just gotten there. He just come back. I think Dutch was there. Glenn Gilberti was helping out, Scott D'Amore, and this is the early days of Dixie. Dixie had just joined as a partner, not too much too previous before that. But yeah, this was Jerry and Jeff's show.
What were their plans? I mean, were there plans to just build a wrestling company? Were there plans to compete with the WWE? Did they ever articulate their plans to you?
I think, it was always, I think they had intentions of wanting to be that alternative, because looking at the landscape, we're talking 2003, it's WWE. That's it, and there was that lapsed fan that, maybe didn't follow the WCW, their WCW fandom over to WWE, and they kind of maybe dropped out a little bit, and the numbers kind of showed that. They're just wrestling for a variety of reasons, wasn't what it had been, 5 years previously. So there was that lull. So like, I think they just wanted to be, I think I heard when Dusty was down there, kind of running the show. I think it was him that said, we don't want to be look. Vince is Denny's. We don't want to be Denny's. We just want to be Waffle House. And that I kind of got that analogy right away. So I think that was
he's a guy too that's kind of forgotten in that whole setup scheme of things. You kind of just forget Dusty was with that organization.
Yeah, he was a guy. He was a guy. I know he was helping out creatively. He was an on-air like authority figure. Right. And yeah, he was pretty thick in the mix, especially when I first started. But I think they always had designs on getting a television deal. That weekly pay-per-view model was pretty unique at the time and different, but like not sustainable. So, going down to Orlando, getting the deal with Fox Sports Net, I think that was, that was all a part of their plan. And then eventually the Spike deal, which was incredible. But I don't think, I think Jerry and Jeff are both smart enough to know that even at that time, you're not going to compete with WWE, but you can be a solid alternative, especially when there's, that lapsed fan market that you can appeal to.
And with your confidence and everything, when you guys got that Spike deal, all of a sudden here you are, you're on national TV. Was there a shift in attitude, shift and progression with you guys? I mean, you're probably thinking, man, this is my opportunity. Were you kind of hoping that you'd be seen by other people, or what was your thoughts on that?
Oh, sure. I mean, even before that, when we got the deal, when we now started going down to Orlando and taping at Universal Studios, and we got the deal with Fox Sports or Fox Sports West, Fox Sports Net, whatever it was. And, we had that rotten like 3 p.m. on a Friday time slot. Even that was massive. That was huge. Like, like now I could be seen, by everybody in North America. So, and then the Spike deal was just, that was like, even like, wow, now we're like prime time Spike. Eventually we even got 2 hours because we were only an hour show, which was tough to cram a bunch of guys on an hour show.
Right. Yeah, it is.
But yeah, no, it was those baby steps. And it was like, wow, I'm actually, I'm under contract. I'm wrestling on television. Like these are the things I dreamed about. When I was, beating up my pillow or my stuffed monkey in my room as a kid, I wasn't thinking about getting paid.
Oh, come on, be honest with you. You're beating up your bedtime Hulk Hogan stuffed doll.
I didn't know. I had a giant red stuffed monkey I won from a carnival.
I had a brown stuffed monkey, and it's my passcode for all of my internet stuff. It is. I had a name for it, which obviously I'm not going to say because it's my passcode for all of
sure.
them. Yeah. I had a regular brown like stuff.
Yeah. This thing was great because it
looked a lot like Mr. Brisco. It looked a lot like him. I mean, like a really close. I think my monkey was from Oklahoma.
My monkey had limbs long enough that I could actually put like top wrist locks and like figure fours on. So but when I was doing, I wasn't thinking about what initials were on the ring skirt. I was just, I want to do this. So the fact that I was doing this and TNA was starting to make a little noise, I was I was like, wow, I'm actually doing this. It was a really cool feeling. Like I got into this 5 years ago, and here I am on television. Not certainly where I want to be yet, but I'm on the way. And it was really
that was a 5-year progression there. That's remarkable. That's really pretty damn quick in old school business.
Very very quick.
Looking back, it really is, man. And I put a lot of pressure on myself. I always, I wanted to, my dream initially was to go to ECW because I went around there early on. Walter brought me around there and I was like, well, this is where guys are kind of getting over just by being good wrestlers. Like I certainly wasn't a good promo. I had an okay look, but if I could work, I could maybe start there. That was my kind of goal. Then obviously ECW crumbled and went out of business. So like TNA picked up where like they left off. And, that's where I'm so thankful I got my opportunity with TNA early on.
Dusty was, we had a finish that with Eddie Guerrero and I in WWE one time with a bull rope match, and Bruce and Vince had kind of been debating the finish, and Vince's answer was call Dusty. So he called Dusty, and he's with TNA on set at the time and gave us the finish for the pay-per-view that night.
That sounds logical, man. I get it.
Awesome.
I get it.
I mean, Dusty was just a different. Guys like Dusty are just different. They're so creative.
Sure, sure. Just cut from a different cloth, man. But that's, yeah, that was his, obviously his strong suit. It's
You
mine.
said you weren't a good promo, which obviously that's your opinion of yourself as you were younger. You're obviously good now because you're doing commentary, doing all this stuff. When did that click? When did you start figuring out how to do a promo? What was there a certain thing that happened? Or was it just a progression of doing it enough?
Well, a little bit of A and a little bit of B. Like in UPW, we'd have promo class, and I was in there, and me and John Cena and a bunch of guys that were under contract at the time, Samoa Joe, and we would have promo class, and we would go on the fly, and we would go back and forth and do all this stuff. So, I started gaining a little bit of tools in the tool belt, and honestly, I just didn't get a lot of opportunities to do promos. They were few and far between, and you're not going to learn if you don't do them. I was doing, at home in the mirror while I'm driving, in my car, until really Chris Daniels and I became the team and were heels in 2011, 12. And I started to get the opportunity to be out there and do in rings and do backstage vignettes and like could be entertaining, could be an a-hole and can be could convince people that, I better go see this babyface beat this guy up. Like that's when it really clicked from a confidence wise. Like at the time, Eric Bischoff was had a lot of say, and Eric was a big proponent of myself and Chris Daniels, and had a lot of confidence in us and liked what we were doing. So he gave us a lot of opportunities to go out there and cut promos. And as you guys know, the more you do it, the better you get. And confidence is everything with promos. If you don't have confidence, you're not going to be able to talk anybody into the building. But once I started getting that confidence, I was like, okay, I can do this and I enjoy it. And that's when it really kind of clicked, A, that I can do it, and B, how important it was.
That's
You were with Chris. You were with Chris there. Why do you think that clicked so well? I mean, you guys, was it your style was so similar, or why do you think it was it clicked? Your
Yeah,
mindset?
we had already been friends for a long time at that point. And we've been opponents hundreds of times. Me, him, AJ, and Samoa Joe all came up together, just and we're inseparable, for years. So we just had a chemistry as opponents. We immediately had a chemistry as partners in a tag team. We thought alike. We talked wrestling nonstop. It just clicked, and when it worked, it worked. We were just two guys that you know we were the perfect, like not that we're in this team's category, but the Midnight Express, except we didn't have Jim Cornette. We were our own Jim Cornette. We were the guys, talking all that nonsense. And it's one of those things. It clicks on all levels, in ring, chemistry, backstage chemistry, promos, all that.
it's kind of interesting to me because I think a lot of guys learn how to work when they turn heel. Like David Von Erich, famously when he went down to Florida, came back a much better worker. You talked to all the guys who knew him when he came back was much better than when he had gone down there. Steamboat obviously never turned heel, but was a great worker. I think he's the anomaly.
Yeah.
Was it the same for you when you turn heel? All of a sudden now you have this freedom to say basically whatever you want. Do you think that's what it was that helped you open up your personality to be able to cut the promo that you had in your mind, but you couldn't get out?
It certainly helped. And, being a heel and having the luxury of wrestling house shows. TNA's house show scheduled at the time was still, pretty good. And when you're in the constraints of a television show, you got, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, you got to hit
Yeah.
time and all that. When you're having house show matches, you can go, hey, you got 15, 18, you can try stuff, you can take your time. And, as a heel, you dictate the pace of the match. And for me, that was a game changer. It's like, I'm driving the bus here, okay? Like, we're gonna go at this pace. We're gonna bring them up, we're gonna bring them down, we're gonna level them out, then we're gonna bring them up again. It's certainly when you have control, it helps you with your confidence. At least it did with me. We're not all Kurt Angle, where you get every aspect of the business within a year. Like that doesn't happen. He's a one of one. So like, for me, it was like, like I said, the learning the moves that came quick. The when, why, where, and how, or the when, why, and where that came later. The promo that came later. The learning to work as a heel and dictate the pace that came later. So you put all these things together, and then you are a more complete wrestler. So certainly getting the reps in on house shows, being a heel, and again, we're working house show matches with, like we're teaming against AJ Styles and Kurt Angle and, and Samoa Joe and like all these, if you're not learning, you're
Right,
not
yeah.
improving, then it's a you
Yeah.
problem.
And I love when guys say, Kurt was pretty good. No, he wasn't. He was the best on the planet. Out of 8.5 billion people, he was not. He was number one. That's not good. That's alien level.
Agreed. I
I mean, there's
agreed.
nothing. Kurt is an anomaly. You can't use Kurt
Yeah.
as an example for anything.
There's nothing ordinary about
There's
Kurt
nothing
Angle.
ordinary about him. Yeah, he picked everything up quicker than everybody else. So Kurt he's not even fair to bring up.
I'm still convinced he might be a cyborg to this day.
Yeah, he is.
That was sent here to be a professional wrestler, and he just hasn't disclosed that information to us yet. He's unreal, man.
We worked a last man standing match or something like that. I think it was in England. I can't remember where it was. Anyway, he's new in the business, and he came back kind of laughing. I go, "What was it?" He goes, "Well, while you were down selling, I got up and fell back down." Basically, he's putting himself over. I go, "You
Yeah.
bastard!"
Yep.
like you're in the business like 2 days,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you're ribbing me, and I'm thinking.
You got those instincts.
That's right, just instincts. I'm going. I was so proud of him for that. I thought it was fantastic.
I had a run of matches in like late 2007 where I wrestled Christian in a ladder match for a chance to wrestle Kurt Angle for the title. I won the ladder match, and then 2 days, 3 days later, wrestled Kurt Angle. And between those two matches, that was like, you know, I equipped like 2 years of actual training, just being in the ring with those guys, learning from them, just seeing the pace they cut and all that. It was just like invaluable. Talk about invaluable experience, man. Like just it, like I was such a better wrestler after those two matches, just being in the ring with those guys.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that and look, I'm not taking a shot at the young guys. I try not to ever do that. But when you have your match plan from A to Z, you don't learn. You don't learn
Hmm.
much at all. Now you can learn some. You're out there and you're still getting the reaction and stuff. But when you're out there with guys like Kurt and Christian, in my case, guys like Murdoch and Bob Orton Jr. and guys like that, you learn. I mean, that's where you really learn. That's where you get finished. That's where you get your doctorate degree. And it's tough nowadays. And I understand why they do it that way. The TV time and there's so much pressure on these guys, but it's tough without having that learning capacity coming out of those matches.
Sure, like you said, that's where you get your polish. And like though, those guys, it's still in my opinion, it's still very important to work on feel. Because not no two crowds are going to be the same. You know, so knowing how to work on feel is still a very important tool to have in your tool belt as a pro wrestler.
Isn't that the
You
crazy
know,
thing? You can work in Cleveland one day or one
yeah.
afternoon in Detroit that night, and it's a different crowd, and it's
It's
basically the same area of the country, and it's inexplicable.
There's nothing else like it. A Broadway show, the crowd's probably going to react the same way no matter where you're at. But pro wrestling is just it's its own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Listen to you talk and some of the expressions you make. You are so old school in your thoughts in this business, which I really admire and respect. I mean, the things about just your little quotes, about
Yeah,
taking your time and improving. If you're not improving, working with this guy, it's a you problem.
yeah,
So many people doesn't look at the business like that. It's always somebody else's fault. Well, he did this, and well, if
right,
you know he did that and you know it's wrong, why did you change the flow of it?
right. And I am. Thank you for saying that. I still do take a very old school approach to the business because all those old school things still work. They still apply. It's still, you could tell a great story with black hat versus white hat. It still works. But at the same time, embracing the new style and implementing that as well. And that honestly, that all comes from Killer Kowalski. He ingrained that in me so much. And I was such a fan of him as a trainer and as a human being that it's like, it's almost my duty to like, to still maintain all those principles that he taught me and share those with the world and share those with the younger guys. I'm still very much in that mindset.
so let me ask you, because you would know this better than me and Mr. Briscoe would by far. Roddy Piper used to always tell me you can't out Hulk the Hulk,
Mhm.
meaning the guy on top. There's no sense in
Yeah.
copying the guy on top because you can't be the next Stone Cold. There's not a next Stone Cold. There's
Right.
a John Cena, which is completely different. There's a Rock, which is completely different. Piper used to always say stuff like that. Just you can't be a copycat. you're in the middle of everything now, just
Mhm.
like you have been for some time. Me and Mr. Briscoe are not. Is old school becoming kind of the new thing now? Because old school now is something that people don't do. It's something different.
Mhm.
Does that make it stand out in your opinion?
I think so because a lot of times, like I've been on shows, I've been on TNA shows where, there's a match between, maybe two incredible tag teams or two X Division guys, and just athletically, it's unbelievable and it is very entertaining. And then there's a match between, a singles match where these guys maybe don't do as much, but just they told such a compelling story with a body part they worked, or with the way one guy was selling, and it just, the story was better than the spectacle. That's not always going to be the case, but a lot of times it is. And I think, because, not in all promotions, but the emphasis is on the moves and the high flying moves, that when you do see a well thought out story play out in front of your eyes, it stays with you. Just like any movie, there's millions of action movies. You'll watch and you'll go, okay, that was good. But those movies with the great stories, the Gladiators, the Bravehearts, the stuff like that, those stick with you because it's tugging on different emotions. So yeah, to your point, I think it does stand out more because of the climate today where there's so much incredible athleticism.
Yeah, and it is incredible athleticism. I mean, it's
Yeah,
unbelievable what these guys are doing. It's just unreal. I just always thought it's not an either or. It's not you don't have to choose one or the other. Now, very few guys can do both. That's an
sure,
incredibly rare talent.
sure.
Very few guys have ever been able to do both. We only had one Shawn Michaels. We didn't have 20.
Right.
It's very rare to have somebody that can do both. When did NXT fit into all of this? Was that 2005 that you ended up going to NXT?
Yeah, so I actually, yeah, so I never even really went to like NXT. This was OVW was the place. Um, and I got signed as, Tommy Dreamer was working for WWF at the time, and he says, "Hey, we're gonna WWE, sorry." And I was working without a contract at the time at TNA, and he's like, "Well, we're looking to revamp the cruiserweight division, and we want to bring you in." And I had just read something that WWE said they didn't want to hire anybody that was under 6 foot or under 220. So I was like, "Okay, which is
That's
it?"
thanks to
So
Mr. Briscoe. He's the one who was the one hiring me.
that was that it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so they basically hired me, and it wasn't like it was like, okay, you're hired. I went on the road for the 2 weeks, did a bunch of dark matches, and then went home. And was just like, I would call in like, hey, do you want me to do anything? Nope, just hold tight. This is when they had OVW running. They had just opened Deep South, and I was just told to stay home. When they came out to California, I would drive in and do a match, and they take a look at me like you're doing great. We just hang tight. And I was like getting antsy. I was like,
Yeah, really, yeah.
yeah, like like I don't like can I do indies? No, don't do indies. Okay. Well, I was like, they sent me to OVW for a week just to do like went down there, trained for a week, did a match, and went home again. It was just a lot of like, I think they had planned to revamp the cruiserweight division, but it wasn't fully thought out. And then eventually they did bring me in on Velocity and start doing a little bit, but it was very strange. It was a strange time. This was 2005. So it was a strange time in the business, a strange time for me personally and professionally, and just a different time WWF, WWE.
And then what finally happened? Did you decide that this was not for you?
Yeah, so they bring me in and they put me on Velocity, and like they start, it was cool at first. I'm wrestling like, little Guido and Paul London and Scotty 2 Hotty and all like the cruiserweight guys, and I'm winning matches, and they're giving me like, pre-tapes and promos, and but there's no like, it's just matches. And the environment backstage, I never felt like I was part of the team. It was like, it was kind of like a little bit of that walking on eggshells stuff, and it was a business, and it was very professional, and I was not used to professional wrestling being a business. I was not mature enough to approach it like a businessman. It was still my passion, my fun thing that I did, but I never approached it as a business. And that's where things got kind of sideways in my WWE time. And that's when it was like, well, hey, we want you to cut your hair. I was like, I'll cut my hair. I was still that rebellious prick that I was when I was 17. It was like, okay, well, and then I remember the conversation with Johnny Ace was like, well, do you still even want to work here? And I go, no, I don't, honestly. He's like, okay, fine. And we ended it. And it was like, it's so crazy because again, you tell 8-year-old me that I'm gonna have that conversation, and I'm like, there's no way. But that's just, you know, I, I've always stood up for myself, whether it's right or wrong. A lot of times it's been wrong, a lot of times. But every time it's been wrong, I've learned from it, and that was one of them. I just wasn't ready to be there at the time. I just was not mature enough. I just, my approach wasn't ready. It's honestly the best thing that happened because had I stayed, I would have been one of these guys that just burned out and maybe just, maybe lost my love and my passion for it. But I again, I bet on myself, and I done that a couple times. I bet on myself, and I, went elsewhere, and I went back to TNA and had to kind of rebuild myself. But it's all, again, looking back, everything I did, I had to do.
Yeah.
When you went back to TNA, did they kind of look at you because you'd had that brief flirt with WWE? Did they kind of look at you as a different type of talent at that time, or was you still Frankie?
So I had a good relationship with everyone at TNA, and they didn't want me to leave. But I was at the time I was just kind of floundering there. They weren't doing much with me, and this was the WWE offered me an opportunity, so it was almost I couldn't say no. But I was always told, "Hey, if things don't work out, you have a spot here waiting for you." Well, as we know in pro wrestling, what someone tells you isn't always the truth. So that wasn't necessarily the truth. So, I was released, and I told them, "Hey," and they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll bring you back." And it was like, and then it was, phones weren't being picked up, emails weren't being returned, and it's like, well, what's going on? Eventually, I was brought back in, but again,
At that time, Frank, did you think you'd made the wrong decision? When you wasn't getting any return
yeah,
phone calls.
there's certainly some second guessing, man. When like, one minute you're with the WWE, and the next minute you're supporting yourself. I'm living on my own, obviously. You're supporting yourself on independence only, in a time when independent wrestling wasn't,
Right.
the hotbed that it is now. And you're starting to apply for real jobs, and you're filling out those applications, and it's like, you know, previous experience,
Experience.
and it's like
Yeah.
nothing, or what skills do you have that you could bring to the team? I was like, I can fall down. I don't know. Like
I can sell.
right, yeah, exactly, yeah. I can get color if you guys need me to. I don't know, but
Oh my
it
God!
just
I go to a family reunion one time. Some smart ass second cousin I've never met before goes, so do you put professional wrestler on your resume? And of course, me being a smart ass said, I've never filled out a resume.
nice. Yeah,
Like,
yep,
I have no idea. I'd hate to fill
yep.
out a resume. As Arn Anderson used to say, I'm not qualified to do nothing.
That's just it. Like I'm filling out like legit. Like I never had to get a job, thank God, because I got picked up back up. But like I'm filling out resumes. It's like list your two previous bosses, and it's like John Laurinaitis and Terry Taylor. I don't know, like,
Yeah.
like it's like the last thing I want is Terry Taylor to get a call from Gold's Gym in Palm Springs. Like,
That's
this guy
right. That's
correctly.
right.
So yeah, so there was, there was second guessing, but there's, God, I've second guessed myself a lot in this business. So, but I was brought back in, and yeah, it was, and I was told straight up again by Terry Taylor, who is a dear, dear friend of mine to this day. He straight up told me, he said, "You're not going to be featured, and you're going to lose a lot." And I said, "Can't wait. Let's do
Baby.
it." Because that was my attitude. I was like, "Fine." It's like, build, break me down to build me back up. I was like, I'm all for it.
But in fairness, the cruiserweight division never panned out in WWE. Right,
No.
right, Jerry?
Right. I mean,
I mean,
there's
Vince
always
just
been
didn't
great
see.
aspiration, and in all fairness, there's always been great aspiration to make that division work. But for some reason, and when you don't get the endorsement from the guy on top, you're only going to get so far. And that even though everybody wanted to bring the X division back, and everybody knew the talent, like with Frankie and Scotty and Guido, those guys like that, tremendous athletes and tremendous workers. They were never perceived as the top guys by the top guy. And I think no matter how bad the writers and the agents would push them, there was always that perception, well, he can't make it here, and that was always sad to me because I'm basically cruiserweight too, so
Yeah.
I wanted it to make it, unparalleled. I think with the talent that we had, the guys that I just named off, that they could have made it, but when you don't have the support from the top guy, it's just not going to make it. And I think
Yeah, I was brought in at the time. They hired myself, Kid Cash, and the Mexicools, essentially. Those were we were like the guys that were going to be the,
Right. You guys
core
were
of their
creative.
cruiserweight division. And obviously, they put those guys, the Mexicools, together and they started doing their own thing. But even watching after I left, the cruiserweight division never really
No,
Never
kind of got
kicked
off the
off, right?
ground.
no.
Yeah.
So I don't think you made a bad decision.
I don't think so either, man. Looking back, I obviously didn't. At the time, people in my own family thought I was insane from walking
Of
away,
course.
and I was like, it's like I've always stuck up for myself, right or wrong. I've stuck up for myself and done what I felt I needed to do.
What's been the
Frankie,
difference?
20 years in this business, you are insane. I mean,
Oh, 100%. I realize that now. Yeah.
What's been the difference? And I don't want to bash anybody. I'm just talking about the difference in say personalities, the company itself, and TNA from the different iterations from the Jarretts to Dixie to now to different. What do you, because you're one of the few guys that have been there almost the entire time.
Yeah. I mean, it's management is one. You know, just in the last year, we've had a management shakeup, and a lot of the roster at the time was very worried and very concerned, and I was, myself and like Eric Young are kind of being the voices of reason, going like, guys, like, cool it. Like I had been through a bunch. I had been through a bunch of those back in the day. Um, so definitely management. I think at this time, for a long time, TNA was, being written off from its second week. People were saying this place is never going to last. It lasted a year. It's like, well, it's not going to last another year. It lasted five. Well, it's not going to last another five. And, here we are going on with 23, 22, whatever it is.
wow.
Yeah. So like, I think what TNA has going for it now is we have a great management team in place and we have a lot of equity. I think we have a lot of goodwill with the pro wrestling fans right now. Obviously, this deal with WWE and NXT is huge. We TNA are getting the rub from them, and it's a very very beneficial relationship for us. But a lot of fans, younger fans, grew up watching TNA. I have
That's right.
it makes me feel old when I have, grown men with beards and children telling me that they grew up watching me. And I'm like, well, you probably did. That's where they grew up watching AJ Styles and the Motor City Machine Gun, Samoa Joe, myself, Chris Daniels, and Petey Williams and Amazing Red and all these guys. So I think we have a lot of goodwill with the fans and the fact that we're still around and we have endured, and TNA I think really has turned into that like alternative, like it's if you're a WWE fan, it's okay to like TNA, because of
Have you found any animosity with any of the fans? That have you sold out? You sold out to the corporation. Do you hear that? I mean, back a few years ago, you
yeah,
would hear it on that. You sold out, somebody leaving. You sold out. You
yeah.
sold out. You guys hear any of that?
Man, this in terms of this relationship, I personally, I've only seen and heard positive things from the wrestling community, the wrestling fans, the locker room, the men and women in the TNA locker room. There may be some negativity. I don't either just flush it out or don't listen to it, or it hasn't landed on my doorstep yet. But this has all been a very
Good,
positive relationship thus far.
good, good.
When I went down to San Antonio, I told Tommy afterwards that was one of the best pay-per-views I've ever seen. And I mean, anywhere. It was fantastic from top to bottom. I mean, you guys
Yeah.
have got a really good show. You got really good talent. I think Tommy is doing a terrific job, in my opinion.
Well,
Uh, and you're selling out nearly everywhere you're going. I mean, that's got to make you feel really good. Like Jerry and I talk about this all the time. It's hard to get over anywhere.
sure.
Anywhere. I don't care if you're in a territory in Southwest Missouri. It's hard to get over anywhere. If you can get over, that's hard to do. TNA's getting over now. And you're
Yeah,
hearing the people like the old ECW, people are chanting TNA when they something good happens. You don't hear that with WWE. You didn't
Right.
hear that with WCW. It's pretty
Right.
unique. People are taking an ownership of the brand, which has got to be pretty cool for you.
It's awesome, and like the one thing that we've never lacked is the drive and the determination of the in-ring talent. We always have gone out there with a chip on our shoulder, trying to prove that we belong in the industry and try to put on the absolute best show that we can. And yeah, and like we do have a smaller roster, and I think that benefits us because we have a very focused television show, and everybody on the roster has something maybe not everybody's being featured, in a top spot, but everybody has something, some type of direction. And it's very easy to watch a TNA show and follow what's going along. And yeah, the crowds have been great the last like 6 months, especially. People are into the in-ring stuff. They know our characters, they know the stories. They're invested in TNA and they're along for the ride. And they, like I said, I think we have enough goodwill. They want to see bigger things happen. And, you know, based on, us announcing LA and New York and these bigger venues we're doing and, the amount of interest is there, I think we're trending in the right direction on all the measurable metrics.
Yeah, and it seems like with the void that's left by WWE going to Netflix, you have terrestrial stations that still want live content. And wrestling is the greatest live content there is because there's not an off season.
Sure.
It's not like, baseball that's 6 or 7 months a year, or NFL 6 months a year. It's 52 weeks a year. So the odds of you guys getting a contract, which I have not talked to Tommy about, I have no idea about any of this stuff, to me would seem very high that you guys would get one. And I hope you do because I think the brand is just fantastic.
Thank you. And I agree. And I know that's, talking internally to management. That is like the focus is getting distribution, getting on a, bigger network. Obviously, getting on Sportsnet 360 in Canada, when WWE went to Netflix was
Right.
massive for us because that's the equivalent to ESPN in Canada, which is going to put a lot more eyeballs on our product. Now we just need that to happen.
It just means you have to run Canada though, which is kind of
in North America. Yeah. We just announced Brampton, so I'm married to Canadian.
The 51st state, John.
That's right, the 51st state. I would mention that up there, Frankie. They really like that when you call it the 51st state.
I'll
You can
definitely.
really turn babyface by telling them.
That's right. Tell them so. We're so glad to be here in the 51st state. We welcome you to the United States.
That would be great for me to say because they already hate my guts, so that would be awesome. So, yeah, so that's huge. So if we could get that, something like we're in the era of streaming, so obviously if like God dare I say a Paramount Plus, anybody like that, like something like that, and I know management is working tirelessly on doing that for us, and I think with the momentum we have, I also think I would hope that by the end of the year we do have a different distribution deal, getting more eyes on us.
When you came back to TNA, you went to AEW for a while. Was it like a pair of old slippers that you came back to? Was the experience at AEW, did you not have a good experience? Were you just kind of wanting to come back to TNA? Did your contract run up? What happened?
I mean, so I was with AEW like before the company had initials. Like I was, I had I myself and Cody and Chris Daniels and Scorpio Sky and the Young Bucks and Adam Page were all of our deals were coming up at the end of the year with Ring of Honor. We met Tony Khan. He had told us his vision. We had, talked about our vision and, all these things that AEW was going to become. And I was honestly very, very excited to be a part of that. It was like, wow, this is something, we could be part of something new and something different. And he had these relationships with these television people and TBS and TNT and like, wow, this is actually a thing. And so that first year there was a lot of excitement and we got the TV deal and we, debuted on television. And at the time AEW had that goodwill of the fan base because they were still wanting to see, something different. It didn't pan out the way I thought it was going to. Let's just say that. Before I upset all the AEW fans, again, if you enjoy AEW, enjoy it. Enjoy all wrestling. It's fine. For me, the presentation just wasn't necessarily what I liked as a fan of pro wrestling. I didn't think I was being used to my potential. And I say this all the time. The most valuable thing I can give you of mine is my time. And that's the most valuable thing I can ask you to give me is your time, because that's one thing we're all running out of. My time left in the business, I hope it's a very, very long time. I want to give that to somebody that's going to value it. And I didn't feel my time was being valued. And I had just re-signed with AEW. And when it came time to roll me over, I got a phone call saying, all right, we're going to roll you over. And I kind of just said, hey, stop right there. I'd like to talk about that. And I really don't want to be rolled over. And so they were kind of taken back by that. And I had meetings and just said, look, I would very much like to just be, let's just end this relationship after the 1 year. I still had 2 years left. And, kind of went back and forth on that. And to their credit, they let me go. And again, I didn't have a plan. I hadn't talked to anybody. I didn't, Scott D'Amore was in charge of TNA at the time. And once I got that, in writing that I was released, I talked to some people in WWE, very, very positive, great conversations there. Talked to Scott and like just, after talking to Scott for an hour and about the way he saw things and the way he saw things for me and the way I saw things, it was like, yeah, this is a good fit. This is a good fit. And coming back when I did, it just that, my timing was very good. Traditionally my timing sucked with things like this. My timing was good because again, that's right when TNA started to kind of, regain momentum and be on the upswing. So it was, and on a personal note, it was, my confidence, level jumped uh, a lot coming back to TNA.
Yeah, but it must feels like something just kind of like coming home. Sometimes when
Yeah,
you go place, we've all done that, and sometimes it just feels like you come home to something and just all the worries and anxiety in the world go away from you. You think, all right, this is where I need to be.
sure. And like, you can't tell my story without talking about TNA, like the bulk of my catalog and my matches and everything. I grew up in TNA. Like literally and figuratively grew up in TNA. That's where you see Frankie Kazarian, like all those early, fairground shows and the Spike TV days. That's my company. And now, being an elder statesman in the locker room, I take a great deal of ownership and pride in that.
So you play the guitar. Why are you not out there with Elias or his cousin Elijah? I've
Well,
always see. I don't. Well, which one does TNA have? They have Elias or
we have
Elijah?
Elijah, I believe. Yeah. No, I play the bass
Could have
guitar.
got
So
Elias. He
yeah,
was better.
I play the bass guitar. So like I'm not a lead guitar guy or rhythm guitar. I play bass. So if they ever need me to hold down the rhythm, I will. But but it's him and Joe Hendry are the musicians, and I'll let them embarrass themselves out there.
You don't get your own like Kazarian pit with your guitar and
Yeah, no. No, nope, nope. They save that for those guys. But I've done a lot of my band. We've done a lot of like wrestling related things. We played the Jericho Cruise. We've played the Whiskey before WrestleMania and stuff. So that's cool. There's been a little bit of crossover, but I've never brought that on screen. I've always left that as my side hustle.
why haven't you?
Yeah,
Just
why
I don't know,
haven't
like.
you? I think it's fantastic.
Well, I mean, if you look at the way I dress, like I dress like an asshole in the ridiculous shades and scarves and stuff. That's
Well,
my on
you're a
stage.
rock and roll star.
That's just
That's
it. So
right. That's
that's my
right. You
stage.
just described a 1970 rock and roll guy.
Right. That's my stage look. And when I switched heel, I was like, I'm gonna because I want to look like a guy that if I saw him walk in the room, I would go, I want to kick that guy's ass
Yeah.
just by looking at him. That's kind of been my inspiration. So I guess in a way I did kind of bring that to, my wrestling persona.
So you can go ahead and tell us. Nobody watches this show. When are you cashing in your Money in the Bank gimmick?
Well, any show that you're not on, so you can't come clothesline from doing that, I guess. So if you give me your schedule, let me know what towns you're going to be in and what towns you're not. And maybe I'll
That's
make
right.
it.
I'm gonna send you my schedule. That
Could
was
you
all a
please?
mistake. I want to apologize publicly for that.
I've, yeah,
Here, John's schedule. I got it right here on this.
That's right. Jerry's got my schedule.
please text that to me so I can be a little strategic about this.
Right, here's both sides of it right here.
All right.
As you can see, it don't have many dates on it.
Yeah.
That's his schedule.
So you got a big summer ahead of you. You got the LA April 27th in that, right? And then
Yep.
UBS in New York July 20th, right?
Yep. That's it.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a huge step up, and look, again, I'm not people are gonna clip this out for clickbait. I hate that.
Sure.
It's just exactly opposite of AEW. You guys are going from the small to the big,
Yeah.
which is the progression you want. And I'm not taking a shot at AEW.
Sure.
They're their own company and they just had a good show down in Australia. Congratulations to those guys.
Absolutely.
It's
Sure.
really cool that you guys are you're filling up these arenas. And when I was at one of the shows, I said something about it being sold out. They go, yeah, we should have got a bigger arena. I go, guys, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
I know you're bitching about it, but it's a good problem to have.
Taking those baby steps. Yeah, man. Like coming out to the Galen Center where USC plays basketball. Beautiful venue. I got to go there to do media, and they're very excited to have us. And personally for me, like being a Southern California guy and seeing the bulk of my live wrestling in Los Angeles as a kid, that'll be super cool to perform there on pay-per-view. And then obviously New York for Slammiversary is going to be huge, and that's just it. Filling these bigger arenas will also have advertisers looking at us. It'll also have distributors looking at us. All these things are part of the plan to help TNA grow. So it's everything is proceeding as planned.
Awesome. Hey, Frankie, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you coming on. Mr. Brisco said that he had gotten you. He goes, "What do you think about Frankie Kazarian?" I go, "I love Frankie Kazarian. He's awesome. You're my kind of guy. You'd have fit right in with Hot Rod Roddy Piper and the boys back in the day." So
Man, that's just you saying that means the world to me, man. I love this business. I love just sitting and talking to, a couple of guys that have been there and done that like you gentlemen and just chopping it up about wrestling. So it was a real pleasure for me to be here and chat with you gentlemen.